Civilian casualties. I think the people of Gaza are the victims of the brutal Hamas regime. They are holding them hostage, and they're hiding behind them. It is the right of every state to defend itself, and Israel will continue to do what it needs to do to defend its people. This is not only our right, this is our duty. Despite the Israeli offensive, rocket fire from Gaza into Israeli territory is still continuing. A rocket fire from Gaza hit just a mile away from Ben Gurion International Airport outside Tel Aviv on Tuesday. This has prompted the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration to ban all flights into Israel for the next 24 hours. Several European airlines have also followed suit. For CRI, I'm CG. For more on the situation in Gaza, CRI's Shane Bingham spoke earlier with Professor Li Guofu, director of the Center for Middle East Studies at the China Institute of International Studies.
What's holding up the implementation of a ceasefire agreement as demanded by the international community?
I think, at this moment, and both Israel and Hamas, they have different motivations for the ceasefire. And for Israel, the main task of sending the troops not only to eliminate, Hamas launching rocket ability, but also try to destroy what they call it, the tunnels, and Hamas using the tunnels to attacking Israeli soldiers. One of the objectives of Hamas is try what they call it the changing the status of the Gaza Strip, because at this moment the Gaza Strip has been blocked by the Israelis, and that's why the Hamas said that one of the conditions for the ceasefire is asking the Israeli to lift the blockade. The main purpose in the Gaza Strip has not and accomplished yet. So I personally believe at this moment the condition for the ceasefire has not reached.
Are there any ramifications for Egypt considering the rejection of its unconditional ceasefire? I mean, Hamas doesn't trust Egypt ever since the ouster of the country's former Islamist president, Mohamed Morsi, last summer. Can Qatar or Turkey step in and take a bigger role in the mediation process now?
I think the problem is that, since Egypt did not, be trusted by the Hamas, and also the Israelis would not trust the Qatar and the Turkey, I believe these two countries may have some function of mediation, but I don't believe these two countries would succeed or try to persuade it. For example, Israelis and also Hamas, at both sides accepted the ceasefire. The only, I think, at this moment can be working on both sides is the UN.
We've heard word that the stockpile of rockets held by Hamas has basically been cut in half over the past couple of weeks during this conflict. So what happens if Hamas runs out of rockets? Do they change tactics? What do they do?
Since at this moment, the international community is working very hard to try to bring the ceasefire on the ground. So I personally, I don't believe this kind of fighting would continue to be lasted, as we said, a few weeks.
Professor Li Guofu, director of the Center for Middle East Studies at the China Institute of International Studies, speaking with CRI, Shane Bingham. 10 minutes past the hour. Forensics experts from the Netherlands have begun counting the bodies of the victims of downed Malaysian Airlines flight MH17. Bodies have been moved by train to the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv from the rebel-controlled crash site in eastern Ukraine. First series of bodies are due to be flown to the Dutch city of Eindhoven later on this Wednesday. Nearly 200 of the victims from the crash are Dutch nationals. Head of the Dutch forensics team, Jan Twinder, says around one-third of the nearly 300 victims are still unaccounted for. We will continue until the last victim is identified and brought home. As far as we know at this moment, we are talking about 200, and that is for sure 200 victims, which means that there are probably remains left in the area where this disaster took place. Meantime, European monitors are calling for investigators with proper expertise to intensively inspect the crash site. Spokesperson for the OSCE monitoring mission, Michael Borchio, says they have noticed changes on the scene.
fuselage has been moved. And also, we're going to be checking our photographic evidence with the Malaysians, but it appeared that, again, that big cone section had been more or less split into two, and also there could have been possibly changes to the tail fin as well.
So far, there's still not been a full-scale investigation on the site. Ukrainian rebels have handed over the plane's 2 black boxes to Malaysian authorities. Those devices are being taken to the UK for analysis. Meantime, in Brussels, European Union foreign ministers have announced more sanctions against Russia for its alleged backing of the Ukrainian rebels. Dutch Foreign Minister Frans Timmermans says the sanctions include more visa bans and asset freezes on more officials.
We've also decided that the Commission will be tasked to look at a number of potential measures in a number of fields, including defense, dual-use goods, high-tech goods, including in the energy sector, and financial services.
The EU decision comes on the heels of the United States bringing down more sanctions on Russia last week connected to the situation in Ukraine. Former Jakarta Governor Joko Widodo has officially been declared winner of Indonesia's presidential election. Official results released by Indonesia's General Election Commission show Widodo has taken 53% of the vote.
This is a victory for all Indonesian people. We hope this victory will pave the way to build Indonesia to be an independent economy.
His rival, former General Prabowo Subianto, came in second with 46% support. Despite the results being made official, Subianto has been disputing the election, claiming fraud. Former furniture exporter, commonly known as Jokowi, enjoys support amongst Indonesia's younger population. Widodo campaigned on a promise to break with Indonesia's authoritarian past and create a better social welfare system for the poor. If all goes as planned, he's set to replace outgoing President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono in October. China's new envoy for Afghanistan has issued a call for a peaceful transition of power in that country amid the political showdown taking place between the country's 2 presidential candidates. CRI Xi Jiao with more.
Sun Yuxi, China's first envoy to Afghanistan, makes a remark ahead of leaving to the war-torn country. Sun says his job this time is to help the peaceful transition of the country's government.
I hope I can finish the task within several weeks, and it is more important for every political power to put peace and stability atop their agendas and reach a national reconciliation. This would require unity and hard work from all parties and political powers, as well as solid actions on reconstruction.
Sun Yuxi had been in charge of business related to Afghanistan and Asia in the foreign ministry for more than a decade. He was the Chinese ambassador to Afghanistan for 2 years, beginning in 2002, after the U.S. launched military operations targeting the Taliban militants in the country. As the first Chinese diplomat in the country since the transitional government was established in Afghanistan, Sun Yuxi stresses that economic development is more important than military aid to maintain long-lasting stability in the country.
To ensure the stability in the country is not dependent on what armed forces should be sent there, but to help them restore and rebuild. The international community should help the Afghan government to strengthen its economic power.
China has offered some $240 million in aid to Afghanistan so far. The diplomat notes that he will be working to step up business cooperation between the 2 countries, and more focus will be given to projects covering infrastructure and environmental protection. Sun also says that China will continue to cooperate with Afghanistan to combat terrorism in the region.
The East Turkestan Islamic movement that Afghanistan used to face in the past is now a major terrorist threat to China. China has worked with Afghanistan on combating the terrorism group with positive results. I hope we will continue to deepen our cooperation and eliminate the group one day to restore peace and safety in the region and around the world.
For CRI, this is Xi Jiao.
16 minutes past the hour. Chinese President Xi Jinping has paid a visit to former Cuban leader Fidel Castro in Havana as part of his time in the country. They reportedly exchanged views on bilateral ties, the overall international situation, and other issues of common interest. Xi Jinping has also extended his good wishes to Castro for his forthcoming 88th birthday. As part of his time in Cuba, the Chinese president has been pushing to establish a blueprint to guide future ties between China and the island nation. He's also due to meet with current Cuban leader Raul Castro. Xi Jinping also scheduled to oversee the signing of a number of cooperative agreements covering areas including trade, agriculture, biotechnology, culture, and education. Typhoon Matmo has made landfall in Taiwan. A powerful storm hit the island earlier this morning with winds of around 140 kilometers per hour. The storm has shifted off its original track, though, which yesterday had it making a direct line toward Taipei. Instead, Matmo has made landfall in the relatively unpopulated central region of Taiwan's east coast. Forecasters are also predicting Matmo is going to lose much of its power as it cuts across the Taiwan Strait over the next 12 hours. The storm is still expected to make landfall in Fujian with winds of around 100 kilometers per hour. Heavy rains associated with the storm have already spawned flood warnings across southeast and central China. More than 30,000 fishing vessels have returned safely to Fujian in advance of the storm. Matmo comes on the heels of Typhoon Ramazan, which plowed its way through southern China over the weekend, leaving at least 46 people dead, on top of billions of yuan in damage. Chinese authorities have released a new anti-terrorism guidebook designed to try to help people protect themselves in the face of terrorism. CRI's 2U with more.
As the country's first anti-terrorism handbook designed for the public, the manual offers individuals advices on how to protect themselves during a terrorist attack. It also includes instructions on how to identify possible terrorists. I'm Wei Xing, as director of the Anti-Terrorism Department of the Ministry of Public Security. Anti-terrorism efforts should combine work from professional forces with that of the public. The manual could enhance people's awareness of terrorism and provide basic knowledge about what to do when facing terrorism. The manual has been handed out to the general public in Beijing, Guangdong, and Xinjiang, among other provinces and regions. It comes amid a nationwide campaign to promote anti-terrorism efforts across the country. Li Wei, an anti-terror expert, says such a move is important given the increasing number of terror attacks reported in the country. There are two types of terrorism that would result in massive casualties. One involves cold weapons, like the attack in Kunming railway station. Authorities were able to launch an emergency response within 1 minute in that case. The other involves the use of inflammables and explosives, like cars on some buses. It's very difficult for authorities to make a quick response. So help from the public can really aid the authorities to deal with this kind of terrorism. 29 people were killed and 143 others injured in a terrorist attack at Kunming railway station in March. A market explosion in Xinjiang's capital Urumqi killed 39 people and injured 94 others in May. Since then, Chinese police started a year-long nationwide anti-terror operation. Police have stepped up armed patrols and security controls at crowded public places and tightened up management of explosives. For CRI, I'm Tu Yan.
The world is constantly changing. Join us here on the Beijing Hour to stay ahead of the game.
Approaching 20 minutes past the hour, it's time for your Wednesday morning check on what's happening in the world of business. First, though, let's see what happened on the markets overnight in both North America and in Europe. Joining me on the desk with another Sui.
Thanks, Paul. U.S. stocks rose on Tuesday as upbeat earnings and positive economic data has pointed to a market that still has room to rise. The U.S. Consumer Price Index has increased through June, and the overall trend is now pointing to a slow build-up of inflationary pressure. This is allaying concerns about deflation in the U.S. At the same time, close to a quarter of all the companies listed on the S&P 500 have reported their results, with over two-thirds posting earnings that topped expectations. We'll have more on some of the names that help move the market in just a moment. At a close, the S&P 500 gained 0.5%. The Dow Jones rose 1/3%, while the Nasdaq added around 0.75%. Meanwhile, European shares also bounced back on Tuesday on strong earnings reports and relaxed concerns about the situation in Gaza and Ukraine. Germany's DAX gained almost 1.3%. French CAC 40 climbed 1.5%, while the FTSE in London closed 1% higher.
All right, thank you very much, Sui. Well, as Sui mentioned, a number of companies on the S&P 500 reporting results. Among them, Apple reporting quarterly profits of some $7.7 billion US dollars, an increase of some 12% from the same period last year. Companies selling over 35 million iPhones through the second quarter, which is an increase of 13% from the same time last year. Despite this, though, Apple posting a smaller than expected 6% rise in quarterly revenues. Investors, of course, going to be watching whether to see Apple's new iPhone 6, which is scheduled for release later on this year, is going to impress consumers. Release of the iPhone 5S failing to generate much enthusiasm amongst Apple product users. Meantime, Microsoft reporting a 7% drop in profits through the second quarter. The company says its Nokia division, which it acquired back in April, losing almost $700 million US dollars. Despite the overall drop in profits, Microsoft revenues up 17% through Q2, beating last week's expectations. Microsoft has already announced plans to cut some 18,000 jobs across all of its divisions. Most of those cuts, though, are going to come from its Nokia division. McDonald's reporting its latest quarterly profits falling more than expected after its U.S. division turned in a third straight quarterly sales decline. McDonald's results in Europe also declining. A shock to the market on that front. McDonald's does get around 30% of its revenues from the United States, where sales at its restaurants, open at least 13 months, have fallen 1.5% through the second quarter. Profits here in Asia Pacific, as well as the Middle East and Africa, up about 1%, though. McDonald's quarterly results being given a bit of a boost here in China, even though the company is now embroiled in a new food safety scandal connected to the meat that it's been using. Speaking of which, a new online poll is suggesting over 2/3 of all Chinese consumers now no longer trust Western fast food companies. This comes on the heels of that new scandal connected to rotten meat reportedly being sold to fast food chains, including McDonald's and KFC, amongst others. A survey by Sina.com shows that 77% of the respondents say they feel that the restaurant brands affected by the tainted meat were aware of their sourcing company's faulty practices. At the same time, 69% of those who submitted a response to the online poll said that no longer dine at the restaurants run by the companies.
觉得可能还是会影响一点 the credibility reduced among the public.
比较相信政府这个行政能力。
I believe that the government will solve this problem. Only after that, so I eat their food again. China's food safety watchdog announcing a nationwide investigation into processing factories and meat supplies used by Shanghai House Foods, from being accused of selling expired beef and chicken to McDonald's, KFC, Starbucks, and Pizza Hut as well. For more on this developing scandal, we're joined live on the line now by Benjamin Cavender, principal with China Market Research Group in Shanghai. Ben, thanks as always for taking the time with us. Well, you're in Shanghai. Give us a sense of what's been taking place in Shanghai as far as the scandal is concerned. I mean, is it dominating the papers? And I mean, are there these reports that Sina's been putting out as far as the customer survey is concerned? I mean, is that true? I mean, are people starting to move away from Western fast food restaurants?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a segment of the population that's aware of the problem that's kind of cropped up over the last day or two. And this tends to be the same group that was aware of what happened to KFC going back a year and a half. And so I think what we've got now is a major trust issue with consumers really, I think, wondering about Yum brands and KFC specifically, but also Western fast food and sort of fast food chains in general. They're just not believing that these companies have their act together in terms of controlling the quality of the products that they're bringing into their stores.
Yeah, it's interesting that the survey that Sina did sort of pointed the finger at, the Western fast food restaurants for being complicit in this, even though it was a, Chinese company that sort of, is at the root of this whole thing. So, I mean, what do you do if you're a foreign company operating here in China and you're trying to deal with the marketing situation where, you're having the finger pointed at you, even though realistically it's not, you're not 100% at root responsible?
Yeah, it's really tough. If you're going to be a foreign firm operating in China, you kind of have to accept that you're going to be under a little bit more scrutiny. It's very easy to pick on the bigger Western company that's coming into the market because part of their value proposition is that they're Western, that they're supposed to have even better quality control or a higher quality product. So part of what you have to do is really explain very clearly to the consumer exactly what you're doing to actually be better or to have the high quality standards. In this case, these companies are going to have to do a much better job of saying, look, we've got our own people that we hire that are going and spending time with suppliers to make sure that this kind of problem doesn't happen. And I think they haven't articulated that very well, or they haven't put the investment into that to the extent they really need to be able to pull it off.
We'll see how she plays out in the next few days. Benjamin Cavender, principal with China Market Research in Shanghai. Head of Switzerland Central Bank says the country's currency swap arrangement with China is going to further cement financial ties between the two countries. Thomas Jordan, chair of the Swiss National Bank, says the new deal should pave the way for Chinese banks to open up branch offices in Switzerland.
Well, there is a big interest both on the Swiss side but also on the China side to open up a branch or a subsidiary of a China bank in Switzerland. I cannot comment here on any specific negotiation, but I hope that now the signing of the swap agreement will speed up this process.
PBOC, China's central bank, finalizing a currency swap agreement with the Swiss National Bank worth 150 billion yuan, or around 24 billion US dollars. Deal also giving the Swiss bank investment rights worth 15 billion yuan in China's interbank bond market. At the same time, Swiss banking giant Credit Suisse reporting its biggest quarterly loss in half a year on the heels of its settlement with U.S. authorities over tax evasion charges. The bank recording a net loss of 780 million US dollars for the 3 months ending in June. Credit Suisse taking a hit of nearly 1.8 billion US dollars as part of its settlement with U.S. regulators. Still to come here on the Beijing Hour and special reports, a South African musical troupe still in the stage at the National Center for the Performing Arts here in Beijing. Sports, Colombian striker James Rodriguez, now a member of Real Madrid. Entertainment. Thrill-seeking drama, overtaking Transformers atop the Chinese box office. Carl James, okay. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Gain a new perspective by visiting CRAEnglish.com.
Your definitive stop for everything you've ever wanted to know about China.
Do you want up-to-date analysis, amazing video reports, live radio, and podcasts along the way?
Log on to CRAEnglish.com and get to learn the Middle Kingdom.
Wherever you are, put China at your fingertips by visiting CRAEnglish.com.
Be entertained, be informed, and be inspired. Go to CRAEnglish.com.
The Beijing Hour brings you 60 minutes of comprehensive news and information from China and the rest of the world. We have that through the day with a mix of news, sports, and entertainment. We also bring you in-depth analysis of the day's biggest stories, as well as the closing numbers from the global markets. Join us here on the Beijing Hour. Let's take a look at the world together.
What's happening in China? What's happening in China? What's happening in the world? What's happening in the world? People in the know. The in-depth China show with insights on the news that shapes China and the world. People in the know helps you to know the world better. Every day, in every corner, a different person with a different story. Feature show Frontline explores society, and brings you fresh stories from today's China. Frontline, here on the radio and online at newsplusradio.ca. Technology has made the world a smaller place, but there is still so much we do not know. Every week, Postcards takes you on a trip of exploration and discovery. From a small village in Afghanistan to a protected cultural heritage site in South America. From Africa's amazing natural landscapes to the most advanced breakfast displays in the world. Postcards, where you meet the world without actually taking a trip. Postcards. Stories from ancient times, with the tempo of the modern age. In the Spotlight gives you more choice from the vast landscape of authentic Chinese music and culture. In the Spotlight, the best of China's music and culture from north, south, east, and west. In the Spotlight. Between family and career, they choose dreams. Between work and art, they choose passion. Between the divine and nature, they choose devotion. Between life and death, they choose wisdom. For a journey of life, from inspirational soul. This is Voices from Other Lands.